Good morning, ladies. So today our learning target is I can identify and compare the themes of fables. So we're going to look at two very short fables today, and they actually give us our themes, which is awesome. We're going to look at some characteristics of fables in just a moment. But I want to focus on this learning target. I can identify, meaning that I can focus on, pick out, discover, and compare the themes of fable. So when we're thinking about comparing and contrasting, compare is that similarity, contrast is that difference. So today we're focusing just on the comparisons, those similarities between the fables. So I'm going to do our first read. So our first fable is The Goose and the Golden Egg. Once there was a farmer who lived on a modest farm. One day a new goose wandered onto his farmyard. The next morning, when the farmer and his wife went to feed the goose, they were surprised to see that she had laid an egg of pure gold. Every day after that, the goose continued to lay the golden egg. Before long, the farmer and his wife became rich. They still wanted more. One egg each day isn't enough, the farmer told his wife. She suggested that they cut open the goose and take out all the golden eggs at once. But as soon as they killed the goose, they realized there were no more eggs inside. "What have we done?" the farmer's wife cried. "We used to dress in the finest clothes and eat the most expensive food, but now we're poor farmers again." So, theme here at the bottom, those who want everything may end up with nothing. All right, so now let's take a look here. The milkmaid and her pail. A milkmaid was walking down the road with a bucket of fresh milk balancing on her head. As she walked, she dreamed of all the good things the milk would bring. "Milk that creamy," she thought, "can be made into cream, and I can churn the cream to make fresh butter. Then I can sell the butter at the market to buy a dozen eggs. Once the eggs hatch, I'll have a dozen chickens, and when I sell them I'll buy a new dress to wear for the fair next summer. When the miller's son sees me and asks me to dance, I'll toss my head like this." And with that the milkmaid tossed her head, and the wooden bucket of milk fell to the ground, and milk spilled everywhere. So the milkmaid had nothing: no dress, no chickens, no eggs, no butter, and not even the milk she started with. So the theme here is don't count your chickens before they hatch. So after reading those two short fables, I want you to jot down maybe some characteristics of fables, things about fables. Thinking, both of these stories might have that in common. Right, the themes are very similar, but I want you to think about those characteristics of fables because I'm going to give you those answers in just a moment. So let's preview our questions. So we have 5 questions here today. Again, we're only using rap, no multiple choice for today. Number 1, The Goose and the Golden Eggs. Which phrase or line from the text would you consider the most significant clue that shows the message of the theme? So this is kind of a weird phrasing for this question, but what I want to bring to your attention is that the theme is given to us. So they're asking which line from the text you would consider the most significant that supports and gives you the clue of the theme. So what they're really asking for here is supportive evidence of the theme. Number 2, how do you think the farmer and his wife changed from the beginning of the story compared to the end of the story? So think about maybe how they were at the beginning and then how they were at the end. In The Milkmaid and Her Pail, which line or phrase from the text would you consider the most important clue that shows how she was truly counting her chickens before they were hatched? Okay, so again, very similar to number 1. They gave us this theme at the bottom of the little fable, right? So what they're asking here for now is for those supportive details. So here's the big one. Compare the two fables. How are they similar? How are they similar? Make a connection to your own life or to another book and tell about a time that you or a character from a book were counting your chickens before they hatched. Alrighty, so now we're going to jump into our second read, and then I'm going to kind of show you some of my notes, and I did some additional notes today to kind of talk about fables and really dive into these because we're doing fables again tomorrow. Alrighty, so time to close read. You're going to chunk your text. You're going to circle and attempt to define unknown words. Don't get caught up on that. You're going to underline key information. Remember to focus on information that would help to support your answers because you've already previewed your questions. You've been working on that strategy. You're going to summarize in the margin and identify any elements that may be helpful. Okay, so again, we're really focusing on theme for today. So again, if you want to maybe jot down additional themes, and if they give them to us, or maybe rewrite them in your own words, that's a strategy that I used. That might help you to really understand. So it's time to pause the video and conduct your close read, and then you can compare your notes to mine. All right, so before we get started going over some of my close reading notes, I want to talk about our learning target. So again, identify, give a kind of similar word to that, and then compare is finding the similarity. So now is a good chance to kind of check to see if you were able to identify some fable characteristics. So fables always teach a lesson, they're fiction. They use personification. So remember, personification is when kind of human characteristics are tied to animals, okay? They're usually exaggerated and they don't always have a happy ending. So yeah, both of these stories don't have a happy ending. So at the end, we're going to revisit these before I go to our questions and see which characteristics kind of fall for each story. So with the goose and the golden egg, I identified modest, just means like he's on this regular farm. I think that's important because at the end they get, or towards the middle, they get some riches. So I think it's important to know where they came from and why it was such a big deal. So I underlined that a new goose wandered onto the farmyard, right? That was the major event that took place that really kind of changed things for them. So wandered means entered. She laid an egg of pure gold. Wowza. And then she continued to lay a golden egg each day. So Magical Goose comes to the farm and lays golden eggs. That's what I just did. There's only 2 paragraphs, so I did 2 chunks. Um, so then one egg isn't enough, kind of showing that greed. I made a little note there. And then I underlined the last quote that was here from the farmer's wife. We used to dress in the finest clothes and eat the most expensive food, but now we're poor farmers again. And finest means fanciest, right? So farmer and wife get greedy and lose it all. So what I did here too was they give us the theme, right? But what I did was I kind of added to the theme and kind of broke it down a little bit too. It's all about appreciation, right? Don't be greedy and be grateful for what you have. Okay, so before we go on to the milkmaid and her pail, let's look at some of the characteristics. Does it teach us a lesson? Absolutely. Fiction? Absolutely. Personification? I don't really think so. The goose, it's definitely exaggerated. That next one by laying golden eggs, we know that's an exaggeration, but the goose isn't talking or driving a car, so no personification here. And then, yeah, not really a happy ending there for the goose or the farmer and his wife. All right, so let's take a look now at the milkmaid and her pail. So she was bouncing it on her head. Churn means is a fancy word for mix. Um, and I thought it's important to identify that it's bouncing on her head because when it was bouncing on her head, it also fell from her head. So maybe this was a way for her to kind of prevent that if she was doing something else. Um, then I can sell the butter at the market, buy a dozen eggs. The eggs hatch, I'll have a dozen chickens, I'll sell them, buy a new dress. This was her plan, right? It's her plan to make money for the new dress now that she has this great milk that she has. So then, unfortunately, no dress, no chickens, no eggs, no butter, not even the milk she started with, right? So she plays around and loses her chance. That's what happens. So don't count your chickens before they hatch. Also means stay focused, be responsible. But what did she do? She overplanned but underacted. Okay. So before we take a look at questions, let's take a look at some fable characteristics. Did it teach a lesson? Definitely. Was it fiction? Yes. Personification? No. There was really no other animals or inanimate objects in here that were given those human qualities. Um, was it exaggerated? Maybe her dream was maybe a little exaggerated, but I don't think there's too much exaggeration. But did it have a happy ending? No, it definitely fit that category there. All right, so tomorrow we're working with fables again, very similar format. So let's see if you can remember those for tomorrow. So before we got into questions, commonalities between the two fables, and again, commonalities, so that root of common, similar, we're identifying or comparing within fables. So both fables focus on the idea of unhappiness with one's life, right? Both the farmer and the wife were unhappy and they wanted more. And the milkmaid too, she wanted more and the attention of the miller's son. They wanted more than what they had. Exactly. So they both had unhappy endings, right? Characteristic of fables. Their greed clouded their judgment, right? So the greed from the farmer and his wife, they ended up killing the goose that was giving them the golden eggs, right? Clouded their judgment. And the milkmaid, she was just kind of dancing around and wasn't really paying too much attention, and then lost everything that was supposed to get her all of this money. They were both sets of characters were left with nothing in the end. And yes, lesson learned, happy ending, and also a little bit exaggerated. So let's take a look at questions now. The Goose and the Golden Eggs. Which phrase or line from the text would you consider to be the most significant clue? So again, what I have over here is that it was provided on the front. Now we just need two details. So I said the text states before long the farmer and his wife became rich, but they still wanted more. And in the story, the farmer tells his wife, 1 egg a day, each day isn't enough. So again, here, remember we talked about that when we previewed. They gave you your inference here, and you just needed your two details to support. So number 2, how do you think the farmer and his wife changed from the beginning of the story compared to the end of the story? So what I said was, the farmer and his wife learned to be grateful for what they had. Instead of appreciating the magical goose, they killed it. At the end, the farmer says, "What have we done? We used to dress in the finest clothes and eat the most expensive foods." Oops, typo, they're not eating clothes. What am I thinking here? But now we're poor farmers again. Okay, so Milkmaid and her pail, which phrase, they want one with a rationale, would you consider the most important clue in supporting the theme, right? So they gave the claim, the RA, and we need those two details. So I said, in the text, the milkmaid, and I didn't take all of that, but I did take the rest of it. So see, I have the 3 dots here, dreamed of all the good things the milk would bring. She was thinking about all she could get before putting in the work she planned out in her head, right? So that was that kind of over planning, under acting part. Number 4, how are they similar? Okay, so what I did, I chose one of the things that we had from yesterday. So I said both fables shared the commonality that the characters wanted more than what they had. Okay, and then I did one detail from the farmer and one detail from the milkmaid. So the farmer and the wife wanted more than 1 golden egg per day, and the milkmaid wanted a new dress. They wanted more than what they had. So number 5, a connection. I wanted to just verify. I didn't complete this one. I wanted to just give you some guidelines for it. So it can be a personal story when you were greedy, or a time when you overplanned but didn't fully act on it, or a story you read that you can connect to. Okay, so this would be a fun one to discuss maybe during a Zoom. So keep this in mind and have your answer ready for our next Zoom meeting. All right, ladies, thank you so much.